I rise to continue the debate on the 2013 budget, which was presented to this Honourable House by the Honourable Dr. Ashwin Kumar Singh, Minister of Finance, under the theme of overcoming challenges, together accelerating gains for Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the very theme of this budget speaks of the challenges and the call on this entire House to work together in order to overcome them. I am positive, Mr. Speaker, that these challenges are not insurmountable. And if, as the theme suggests, we work together, we can achieve the goal the themes are set before us and accelerate gains for all the peoples of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2013 is before us, and although it does not meet the needs of all the peoples of Guyana, and more particularly the needs of the ordinary man, we on both sides of this Honourable House can work over the next few days and put away our personal preferences and place Guyana and the people first. We must work as a team and make the necessary adjustments to meet the needs of all Guyana. Mr. Speaker, we can make it if we try. The time has long been passed for us to come to grips with the configuration of this 10th Parliament. Mr. Speaker, more than ever, we are hearing of the term one-seat majority. We must forget one seat and remember that on this side of the House stands the majority. We must stop confronting. We must stop confronting and start consulting. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Finance Minister himself has alluded to the configuration of this 10th Parliament, and in so doing, he urged this House to, and I quote, to make sound decisions that can withstand the scrutiny of time. He also asks for rational and meritocratic considerations, and for there to be the identification of sensible and practical solutions. Mr. Speaker, we have come to identify those sensible and practical solutions that will help us to overcome the many challenges to accelerate gains for all Guyana. Mr. Speaker, there can be no denying that the PPPC government has made strides for the further development of Guyana. We on both sides of the House will have seen this. But can we safely say that all is well? No. Budget 2013, though it has in its various developmental components, it has failed to address the needs of the ordinary man. We hear of the country's growth rate over the reporting period, but one question remains in the minds of most Guyanese. What is there for me? Mr. Speaker, the residents of Region Number 3 welcome the news of the proposed rehabilitation of the Western Mara Highway, the canals number 1 and 2 roads. We welcome the 10 measures as outlined by the Honourable Minister of Finance in his budget presentation. They are all commendable. But how much does this mean to the ordinary man, the ordinary public servant? Mr. Speaker, we heard the various proposals for infrastructure development. We need to hear about the proposals for the human development. The ordinary man is not too much concerned about the highways, permission or the Jagan International Airport extension. He's concerned about bread and butter issues. He wants to hear about the salary increases and VAT reduction. This will help him to put food on his family's table. It is quite true, Mr. Speaker. We did not hear of rising food and fuel prices and other essential items in the budget presentation. But the small man knows whenever he goes to the shop, though unannounced, he asks to pay more. We must not behave like the proverbial ostrich and their heads in the sand. and pretend that all is well. All is not. But there is always room for improvement. And in this instance, there is room for improvement. The ordinary man and woman of region number 3 is interested in wages and salaries increases. We are not that much interested in a minimum wage, but the public servants are interested in a living wage. Mr. Speaker, a budget that had it 10% increase in wages and salaries would have enabled the ordinary man and woman to live more comfortably. Mr. Speaker, Region 3's allocation for 2013 is indeed a substantial one. And it caters for the various programs, namely education, health, agriculture, etc. Health. Mr. Speaker, the regional health sector has indeed come a far way. The best hospital is still struggling to become the best hospital. This institution is short of doctors and nurses and other critical staff, although we hear of the number of doctors and nurses that are being trained. This institution is still short of staff. We are grateful for the few nurses and doctors who work additional hours to ensure that their patients are given the best of care, and they must be commended. Some, though, are acting in various positions and are not receiving their acting allowances. Mr. Speaker, I wish at this time to compliment Dr. Bridge Mohan, who is doing all he can in his powers to make this hospital the best hospital. But I wish to appeal to the Honorable Ministers of Health and the Public Service for them to send additional doctors and nurses and specialists to the West Demerara Regional Hospital, the Wakanam Cottage Hospital, and the Legwan Hospital, education. This sector is still without a building they can call their own. In education, it is appalling to see how the officers are cramped in little makeshift cubicles to perform their daily tasks. Mr. Speaker, when GCOM vacated the office, we were of the view that the remaining space will be occupied by the Department of Education Region number 3. This was not so. That space is now the regional stores. Mr. Speaker, we hear of all the glorious interventions for education sector. These are commendable. Our CSEC results are often on par or even surpasses those of our sister CARICOM states. This is indeed a positive indicator that our teachers are performing their duties and our commendations are in order. Many of these students, however, Mr. Speaker, are at home waiting to find a place of employment. I wish to place on record, though, Mr. Speaker, that as a result of my contributions to the 2012 budget debate, some relief measures were brought to the students and teachers of the Village Secondary School. Mr. Speaker, this world is now a global village. And information technology is here to stay with us. We heard the large sums of money spent on information technology. But Mr. Speaker, many of these labs are not functional. Dozens of computers harbor dust in these schools. Mr. Speaker, I will give the names of 2 such schools in Region 3, where over 60 computers lay idle. Potential Secondary and the Laboratory Secondary. Mr. Speaker, much is being done to cater for the need for the learners. Billions of dollars are being spent on the construction and rehabilitation and extension of schools. May I ask this question, Mr. Speaker? 10% of the amount of money spent on buildings be spent on teachers' salaries. Mr. Speaker, the multi-year agreement that was signed by the government of Guyana Teachers and the Guyana Teachers Union is in breach. Teachers are supposed to receive 1 month tax-free of their salary in the month in which they proceed on with the council. Mr. Speaker, the teachers of Region Number 3 receive this money on the first half or the second half of the year. Duty-free concessions. Head teachers would have become eligible for duty-free concessions, but the last set of concessions were granted in 2009. Many head teachers who were eligible are no longer eligible for that concession. Mr. Speaker, in my 2012 budget presentation, I made reference to the conditions under which our trainee teachers study at the Villeneuve In-Service Teacher Training Center. Mr. Speaker, nothing has changed. I can recall saying instead of extending the Windsor Forest Primary Senior Building, that the junior building be renovated. This was not done. This building is still vacant. If this was done, Mr. Speaker, it would have allowed our teachers to have a building they can call their own and be in an environment that is more conducive to learning. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, I'm extending an invitation to the Honorable Minister of Education to visit the CPC Villeneuve Center. Still on education, I wish to ask the Minister of Education, the Honorable Minister of Education, if any study was done as to the risk posed to the students of Leader Secondary School, where it is now being proposed that they erect an e-governance tower. Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Honorable Ms. Amna Ali, alluded in her presentation to value for money. As we speak, the students of the St. John's Secondary School had to vacate their building this morning because of defects on that building. Millions were spent in 2001. Mr. Speaker, are we getting value for money? Mr. Speaker, sports. The youth of Region Number 3 eagerly awaits the completion of that synthetic track. For we believe that this facility will aid in them becoming better sportsmen and women. And it is our hope that the Minister of Regional Development and the Minister of Youth Sports and Culture would see to the complete rehabilitation of the Delamsel Youth Camp. We trust that many sports grounds would be upgraded in 2030, and our young men and women would find a proper place to occupy their time. Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, this region is known for its agricultural capabilities. And while we can boast that our rice farmers would have done fairly well in 2013, despite their challenges, at the moment, some farmers cannot find buyers for the paddy. Some cash-strapped farmers are still waiting assistance from the Ministry of Agriculture and the NDIA to do excavation works, and more particularly in the News Sideline Dam area. Recommendations. Much is being touted about the large housing schemes in Region Number 3. Parfait, Harmony, and Tushin. I recommend to the Honorable Minister of Housing that we should have police outposts in those housing schemes, for we know that crime is on the increase in both schemes. We trust that legislation has been enacted to deal with the violence in school. I remember this moment my colleague in Linden, who has suffered a fractured skull as a result of violence in school. We hope that the Ministry of Education can place social workers in every school. We trust that the Fellowship Practical Instruction Center Industrial Arts be renovated. Fellowship Practical Instruction Center Agriculture. This institution has been closed for more than 4 years, and the head teacher is attached to the Shorewood Secondary School. Mr. Speaker, the time has come for us to arrive at sensible and practical solutions that will help all Guyanese to overcome the many challenges together and accelerate gains for all Guyana. I thank you.